I worked nights as a janitor for almost 10 years, and I thought I'd seen it all. Drunken students sneaking back in after hours, rats in the cafeteria, pipes bursting at the worst possible times. But there's one night I'll never forget, and I still don't know how to explain what I saw. It happened in 2016, when I was assigned to an old elementary school on the edge of town. The place had been shut down for a couple of years for renovations, and they had just reopened certain sections. My job was simple: clean up the dust, sweep, mop, and make sure everything was ready for the next day. At first, it was easy money. The school was half empty, which meant most nights I was alone in wings that hadn't seen kids in years. The building was old, built in the 1940s, and it had that smell: dust, plaster, and old wood that creaks with every step. But one night, something about the building felt heavier. I don't know how else to put it. When I clocked in, the air inside the hallways felt damp, like a storm had just passed, even though the night outside was clear. My flashlight beam looked hazy, as if the air itself was thick with something invisible. I started on the first floor, near the classrooms that had been painted and remodeled recently. Fresh plaster, fresh paint, clean linoleum floors. It should have felt new. But the smell hit me right away, like mildew, like wet soil. I shrugged it off, grabbed my mop, and started working. Around midnight, I was in one of the long hallways on the east side of the building, the one with tall windows along the outside wall. As I passed each door, I glanced inside the classrooms. That's when I noticed it for the first time: a dark smear on one of the walls. At first, I thought it was just leftover paint or maybe water damage. It was near the ceiling, right where the wall met the corner. I rolled my mop bucket over and shined my flashlight. On it wasn't paint. It looked like something had seeped out of the plaster itself. Thick, dark, almost brown. I touched it with the tip of my mop handle, and the liquid smeared across the white plaster, leaving a stain. My stomach turned immediately because I knew that smell. It smelled like blood. I wiped my hand across my mouth, suddenly queasy. I told myself it had to be rust from a leaking pipe or maybe some kind of sealant bleeding through the plaster. But when I leaned closer, I saw tiny rivulets trailing down, like the wall itself was sweating. That was enough for me. I finished the classroom quickly, kept my head down, and moved on. But as I made my way down the hallway, I realized it wasn't just that one wall. Every classroom I passed had some kind of stain on the walls. Small at first, then bigger, darker, spreading out like veins. Some spots were fresh, glistening in the dim light. Others had dried, leaving streaks like rust tears. And the smell. God, the smell got worse the farther I went. By the time I reached the last classroom, I was gagging into my sleeve. I thought about calling my supervisor, but what was I supposed to say?
Hey, the walls are bleeding?
They'd laugh me out of the job. So I pushed my cart toward the next hallway, determined to just finish and get the hell out. That's when I heard it. A soft scratching, like fingernails dragging across the plaster. It came from the classroom I had just left. I froze in the hallway, mop dripping dirty water onto the tile, my ears strained in the silence. The scratching continued, slow, deliberate. I took one step back toward the door, then stopped. My flashlight beam trembled against the wall. I didn't want to look, but I forced myself to. I leaned into the doorway and shined my light across the classroom wall. The stains were moving. I swear to God, I saw them stretch, thin streams running down the wall like they were alive, twisting into patterns. And then I saw something else. Handprints. Bloody handprints pressing against the wall from the inside, as if something or someone was trying to push out. The scratching grew louder. The handprints smeared downward, leaving streaks like long fingers dragging. I stumbled back into the hallway, heart slamming against my ribs. My mop clattered to the floor. The classroom door slammed shut by itself. The bang echoed down the hall, rattling the windows. I didn't stay to see what came next. I grabbed my cart and sprinted down the hallway, wheels squeaking against the tile, echoing too loud in the empty building. But the sound followed me. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Every wall I passed seemed to groan. Some of them bulged outward like something inside was pressing against them. I swear I heard whispers in the plaster. Children's voices, faint, overlapping, chanting words I couldn't understand. By the time I reached the stairwell, the walls were dripping. Not just small stains anymore, long, running streaks of dark liquid, pooling on the floor. sticky under my boots. I nearly slipped as I ran up the stairs, my breath ragged, my heart in my throat. The second floor was worse. The smell hit me like a wave the second I pushed through the stairwell door. Rot, rust, copper. Every wall along that hallway was covered in dark stains. The paint bubbled, plaster cracking like it was rotting from the inside out. And then, from behind me, a voice whispered, "Help us." I spun around, flashlight beam shaking across the empty hallway. Nothing. Just the dripping walls. I don't remember dropping my cart, but I did. My bucket spilled dirty water across the floor, mixing with the dark liquid seeping from the plaster. I ran. I don't even know how I made it outside. I just remember bursting through the double doors into the parking lot, gasping for fresh air. The night sky above me never looking so good. I sat in my car until sunrise, too scared to move, watching the windows of the school, half expecting to see faces pressed against the glass. When I finally went back the next day with my supervisor and another janitor, the walls were spotless. Fresh paint, clean plaster, no stains. No smell, nothing. They laughed when I told them. Said I must have been tired working too many nights alone, but I know what I saw, the stains, the handprints, the whispers. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I still hear that scratching in the walls, like something is waiting to be let out. I used to work nights at a small-town high school, the kind of place that looks frozen in the 70s. Rust-orange lockers, yellowed floor tiles, the faint smell of bleach and sweat soaked into the walls. The school wasn't haunted, not that I believed in that stuff anyway. At least not until I had to clean the old nurse's office. That room doesn't exist anymore. They gutted it out years ago, sealed it up, turned it into storage. But when I worked there, it was still intact, tucked away at the end of a long hallway no students ever used. The first time I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. It smelled like medicine and mildew, a stale dampness that clung to your throat. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, flickering just enough to make the shadows jump around the corners. There was an old cot, yellowed with age, a rolling cabinet with cracked glass, and a single cracked mirror hanging above the sink. That mirror is what I remember most. It wasn't anything special, just a rectangular slab with a crack running down the middle like a crooked smile. But the way it caught the light was strange. Sometimes when I walked past it, I'd swear the reflection lagged behind, like it needed an extra second to catch up. The first time I noticed it, I brushed it off. Lack of sleep, bad lighting, imagination. I worked the graveyard shift after all, and being alone in a silent school can make your brain play tricks on you. But then the reflection started doing things I wasn't doing. I'll never forget the night it really sank in. I was wiping down, the counters rag in hand, my reflection in the mirror moving just like it should, until it didn't. When I leaned down to wipe the sink, my reflection stayed standing, staring right at me. I froze, rag dripping water onto the floor, heart pounding so hard I thought I'd pass out. For a moment I convinced myself it was just the angle, the crack in the glass, anything other than what it looked like. But then the reflection smiled. I wasn't smiling. My lips were pressed tight, my jaw locked. But in the mirror my mouth stretched into a wide grin, teeth too bright under the buzzing light. I stumbled back so hard I hit the rolling cabinet, glass rattling. The reflection tilted its head at me, like it was curious. And then in the blink of an eye it snapped back into sync. Just me, pale-faced, wide-eyed, staring at myself. I told myself I was imagining it. Stress, exhaustion. Hell, maybe I dozed off on my feet for a second. But after that night I started avoiding the nurse's office. I'd clean everywhere else, and when it came to that hallway I'd rush through, eyes down, mop sloshing across the tiles until I was past the door. Of course, my supervisor noticed. "Don't skip rooms," he told me. "Make sure you get the nurse's office too." So one night I forced myself back inside, and that's when things got worse. The mirror didn't just show me anymore. It showed people who weren't there. I was sweeping, trying to ignore the cracked glass when I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. I glanced up and my stomach dropped. Behind me, in the reflection, stood a girl. She couldn't have been more than 16, hair stringy and damp, a hospital gown hanging off her bony shoulders. Her face was pale, lips blue. I spun around so fast I nearly dropped the broom. The room was empty. When I looked back at the mirror, the girl was gone. That was the first time, but not the last. Every night after, the mirror showed me someone different. Sometimes it was a student in uniform, sometimes a teacher I didn't recognize, sometimes people in clothes from decades ago. Their faces were always pale, sunken, lifeless. They just stood there, staring, unmoving. And the worst part? They were always closer in the reflection than they should have been. Once, I swear, I felt one of them breathing against the back of my neck. I started begging my supervisor to reassign me. Anywhere but that wing. He laughed it off, said I was spooking myself, and told me the nurse's office hadn't been used in years. That mirror's older than both of us, he said. Don't overthink it. But I knew something was wrong. The night that finally broke me started like any other. I was exhausted, jittery from too much coffee, dragging my mop through the halls. I put it off as long as I could, but eventually I reached the nurse's office. The air felt thicker than usual, warmer. My skin prickled as soon as I stepped inside. I tried to keep my eyes down, but I couldn't help it. The mirror was full. Not with one or two figures this time. Dozens. The room behind me in the reflection was packed wall to wall with pale faces, all staring straight ahead, all grinning. My throat closed up. My hands shook so hard I dropped the mop. Then slowly, my reflection stepped forward. Not me. Not really. It smiled, that wide, unnatural smile, and lifted its hand in a slow wave. I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were bolted to the floor, and then, God help me, it pressed its hand against the inside of the glass. The mirror rippled, like water, and my reflection started to push through. I snapped out of my trance and bolted. I don't even remember grabbing my stuff. I just remember running through those dark hallways, breath ragged, ears ringing, until I burst into the night air outside. I didn't go back the next day, or ever again. I quit on the spot. A week later, I drove past the school out of morbid curiosity. They'd sealed off that hallway, boarded it up like it didn't exist. But sometimes, when I catch my own reflection, in a bathroom mirror or a dark window late at night, I swear it lingers just a second too long, like it's waiting for the chance to come through. I worked at a middle school for about 3 years. Out of all the late nights, broken toilets, and trashed cafeterias I had to clean, there's one night I'll never forget. The night I went down into the crawl space under the cafeteria. Now, if you've never been in a school crawl space, consider yourself lucky. They're cramped, filthy, and pitch black with just enough space to crouch or crawl on your hands and knees. You don't go down there unless you absolutely have to. But one night I didn't have a choice. It was late fall, a Friday night. The cafeteria smelled like sour milk and grease from that day's lunch rush. I was mopping the floors when I heard it, scratching. At first I thought it was just rats. God knows the place had plenty of them. But this was different. It wasn't skittering, quick like rodents. It was slow, deliberate, long claws dragging across wood. The sound was coming from below. I set the mop aside, crouched near the corner of the room, and listened. The scratching grew louder, joined by a low, heavy breathing like something trying not to be heard. The hairs on my arms stood up. I reported it to the head custodian the next day, but he just waved me off. Probably a raccoon. They get down there sometimes. You'll have to go in and set a trap. Great. So that Monday night, armed with nothing but a flashlight, gloves, and a wrench I grabbed for self-defense, I opened the hatch behind the cafeteria kitchen and lowered myself into the crawl space. The smell hit me first, damp earth, mildew, and something sour, like meat left out too long. I clicked on my flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, illuminating concrete beams, dirt floor, and a maze of pipes. The ceiling was so low I had to crouch. My boots sank slightly in the dirt with each step. It was dead silent. I told myself I'd just look around, check for signs of animals, and get the hell out. But the deeper I went, the more I realized I wasn't alone. The scratching started again. Ahead of me, echoing through the dark. I froze, flashlight shaking in my hand. Hello? My voice cracked, sounding way too loud in the cramped space. No response, just the sound of something shifting in the dirt. dragging itself further away. I swallowed hard and followed, crawling forward, knees grinding against the dirt. That's when I saw it. At first I thought it was a nest, a pile of rags, wrappers, and scraps of wood tucked between the pipes. But as I got closer, I realized it wasn't trash. It was bedding. Something had been living down there. The rags were torn-up clothing, children's clothing, tiny shirts, little shoes, a stained backpack with faded cartoon characters on it. My chest went tight. I wanted to back out right then and there, but curiosity, and something darker, pulled me further in. I aimed my flashlight deeper, past the nest, and froze. Scratches. Hundreds of them, gouged into the concrete beams. Some were deep, long, like claws had raked them over and over. And in the dirt, half buried, I found bones, not big ones, small, like the size of a child's hand. That's when I heard it. A laugh. Soft. Wet. Like someone trying to choke down a giggle. Whipped my light toward the sound for half a second. I saw it, something crouched in the shadows, pale skin stretched tight over a thin frame, eyes glinting like glass in the beam. Its mouth was too wide, teeth jagged, lips pulled back in that awful grin. And then it moved. Fast. I scrambled back, wrench clattering against the pipes as I shoved myself toward the hatch. My flashlight beam whipped wildly across the crawl space, catching glimpses of long fingers clawing at the dirt as it scuttled after me. I swear I felt its breath on my ankles. I threw myself up through the hatch, slamming it shut and locking it with shaking hands. My heart was hammering so hard I nearly puked. For a long time I just sat on the cafeteria floor, back against the wall, wrench clutched in my lap, listening. Scratch, scratch, scratch. It was right under me. After that night I refused to go back down there. I made excuses, claimed the hatch was jammed, anything to avoid it. Eventually the head custodian sealed it up completely, said it was unsafe. But sometimes, late at night when I was alone in that cafeteria, I swore I could hear it, that faint, wet laugh drifting up from beneath the floor. And worse, sometimes the scratching came not from below, but from the walls like it was moving, looking for another way out. I quit the job not long after, but to this day when I walk across quiet floors at night, I still listen for it. The sound of something crawling just beneath me, waiting for me to let my guard down.